Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're having an absolutely fantastic day. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. You should all know exactly what time it is. Bitcoin flipping full bull. It says full bull could come courtesy of the United States government. A new prediction has stated the amount of new, and I mentioned this, I'm pretty sure, in the last video as well. The amount of information about what is or is not happening to the US dollar, what is or is not happening to the bond market, what is or is not taking place with inflation is becoming a bit confusing. I can't be the only one who is a bit confuzzled at all of this news. I keep seeing news that the US dollar is doing well. With the US dollar doing well, people predict that Bitcoin might be down for longer. I've also seen news that says that the US dollar is wobbling, that it's doing okay now, but it's showing indications on the chart that it's going to go down similar times like before in the past, and when the US dollar does bad, Bitcoin does well. I've seen news you might have as well about inflation, as far as what the Fed is going to do next. They previously halted interest rate hikes to see exactly where inflation was going to go and what was going to take place with the world markets. However, depending on which news publications you're reading, or if you're hearing information from good old JP Morgan Chase, it's split like a 40-60 split, where people believe that by December we will have another interest rate hike. The other side of the party believes that by December we will get another announcement that they're once again not raising interest rates. I think we've gotten to a point in the global economic everything where nothing is really clear and probably never will be again, and I say that in a non-joking manner despite me giggling there. It's because, like, no matter where you look, no matter what type of information you try to absorb about what's happening with the markets, and I mean the global economic, traditional financial markets, none of it ever really seems to be making a lot of sense. So, and I said, in traditional fashion, within the cryptocurrency space, price predictions are always kind of a very big, they're always omnipresent. Also, the idea of where Bitcoin's going to go as we get closer to the bull run is always there as well. I told you weeks ago we would be seeing more of these because it is highly expectant from the cryptocurrency market that we're going to see some kind of major big moves. You've seen the titles of my other videos before. I tend to title my videos after news articles that are actually inside of the video. You've noticed the amount of energy in the last couple of weeks. In a Twitter thread, Arthur Hayes, former CEO of crypto exchange BitMEX, eyed ballooning yields as a precursor to a new Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market bull run. A lot of people are claiming that they can now see that things are bad within the traditional market, that certain things are doing better than others, and this is typically an indication that the stock market and the world markets might not be doing too well, that the US dollar looks like it's healthy, but it's actually unhealthy because of the thing that this chart is saying. And the idea, have any of you noticed recently this like weird swoop in once again of people being like, well, if the US dollar and the stock market does bad, Bitcoin will do well? I.e., for the last 2 years, 2.5 years, we were constantly told that we were like linked to the stock market and to the US dollar inadvertently in some sort of way. That is, that if the stock market did well, we would do well. If the stock market did bad, we would also do bad. But now there's like this really weird, what do you call it? Like old ideology at play once again, where a lot of people are bringing back the mojo from 2015, 2016 and saying like, in the event of a world market crash, Bitcoin would actually do well. You get what I'm saying? Like everyone's re-bringing back this idea of like, oh no, Bitcoin will do well if X does bad. Anyway, U.S. Treasury yields are screaming higher. And with that, Arthur Hayes believes that a macroeconomic flashpoint is only a matter of time. The reason comes in the form of a so-called bear steepener, a phenomenon that describes long-term interest rates rising more quickly than short-term interest rates. He said, "Why do I love these markets right now when yields are screaming higher? Bank models have no concept of a bear steepener occurring," end quote, he argued. Given the current steep rise in the 2S30S curve, the difference between the 30-year and 2-year yields, combined with rising long and short-term interest rates, the pressure among the economy is rising, he said, due to the leverage and non-linear risks embedded in banks' portfolios. They will be selling bonds or paying fixed or IRS as rates rises. Was that a sentence? Okay. More selling begets more selling, which is, he said this. He said, which is no bueno for bond prices. He literally said no bueno. And I said it in an American accent because I know he didn't say like no bueno. Just for clarity. The results should be clear. A return to mass liquidity injections counteracting the quantitative tightening since late 2021, which has pressured crypto markets. For those, and without having to, because this is a long article. This is a very long article. He goes into what he thinks is going to happen and why XYZ is going to take place. The entire idea is that, for those of you who have not noticed, interest rates have continued to rise, even if they are not rising within the United States. In other countries, other continents, other world banks are continuing to try to raise their interest rates to try and get inflation under control. It's working, but it's not working. You go into a supermarket, prices have risen by 30, 40, 50, 60, 70%. You hear that the inflation rate is between 4 to 7%, depending on where you are in the world, but it's not really helping. The stock market's going up, but the economy actually isn't doing that well. It's mainly like tech stocks and other factors and like pharmaceuticals who tend to also be doing well right now. The problem is that crunch is also like the rising interest rates has stopped people. The world runs on debt. All of it. The higher interest rates has stopped normal people from taking out debt. And that's a gigantic no-no for the banking sector and for the world's economy because you are supposed to always be in debt. That's how the world functions. The longer you are in debt, the more money you are paying back to the banks for a longer amount of time. This is why we have the idea of a 30-year mortgage is so popular by a bank because they want you to pay them over the course of the next 30 years. Bringing it on back, when interest rates are too high, no one takes out a loan. No one takes out a mortgage. People are less likely to use their credit card. So what happens? The economy begins to dry up quite rapidly. People begin to shift their money into bonds and other things that they think will be a lot better for them in the long term. But when those also don't do well, the only other option that we've seen taking place before since around 2010 is turning back on the printing machine. You, in essence, will need to make sure that you give liquidity to these markets that have no liquidity inside of them. And therefore, if the money printers begin to turn back on, as we have seen in a number of other countries that are not the US, so the news has been that they are already doing this, but it is not as significant because people only pay attention to what's happening to US markets, is that if interest rates stay the same or continue to rise even further from here, the only way out is to actually print more money to make sure that there's more liquidity and more money moving through the actual markets once again. However, if you do this, I mean, it's not that there isn't a downside to it. It's more of a, and I mentioned that to you before. It's a little cringe to actually say it. The problem is that if the money printer turns back on, inflation continues to rise because they have to print more money. The only people who benefit from it are those with assets. That's me, you, us. So we end up in a catch 22.5, 4.9 situation where we do well. The dollar continues to inflate. Assets continue to rise quite rapidly. Bitcoin goes up, but then you also have your neighbor telling you that he can't pay his rent anymore. And so a lot of people do believe that we are headed there. We are once again in a situation where world leaders, especially the Fed, can't argue anymore, and they will have to turn on the money printer. It will at some point happen. It's just a matter of when. But Arthur Hayes is guessing that is probably going to happen over the course of the next year or so, which then once again coincides with the entire idea of the Bitcoin bull market. The Bitcoin bull market taking place, I guess, relatively soon. We always it's always like a, what's the word? Hindsight 2020 kind of thing. No one can time the top of the market, and no one can time when the market is going to bottom. It is literally impossible. No one has ever been able to do it. However, in hindsight, you look at back in the past and you go, it was October 23rd, 2020. That's how low, the lowest point that the prices ever went. And therefore, we moved up from where that was the bottom of the market. It's always in some time in the future when we can tell what happened in the past. So yeah, the optimism is definitely there. A lot of people do believe that we are going to witness, experience, have crazy, amazing, wonderful things happening within the cryptocurrency space. It's just popular news, as it always is, because it's about prices rising and I guess the demise of the US dollar, which is a whole nother conversation that we have to have at some other point. That is a really intense quote, and I will not read that out. Anyway, that's the cryptocurrency bull market. Could be happening relatively soon because they got to print more money's news. Yeah. Let's move on. In news that I try to be optimistic for, but I've seen before in the past that governments can fudge up things quite quickly. South Korea's second largest city, known as Busan, is developing a public blockchain network that will be compatible with Ethereum and Cosmos. The aim is to integrate blockchain-based services from various blockchain mainnets onto a single platform at the city level and develop Busan into a blockchain city. When I say I try to be optimistic, it's mainly because you hear that these governments are creating public blockchain networks that will be compatible with open cryptocurrency networks, and you go, well, that's absolutely wonderful. The issue is that the idea of a public blockchain network from a government is simply a chain that is available to the public. It's not permissionless. It is not a cryptocurrency network in that anyone can use it at any time. It's kind of just another way of like having a website that you have to go and sign into with your personal credentials so they know exactly who you are, so that when you use that chain and you then try and interact with, as it says, compatible with, as you try to interact with Ethereum and Cosmos, you basically let the government know all of your transactions on those chains and what you're doing and what you've been doing and what you did 9.5 years ago and all these other things. So it comes down to this really weird, cool, you think it's like cryptocurrency blockchain acceptance, but no, it's the same exact thing whenever we had news before, those really weird news articles about how this country is creating their own central bank digital currency. Isn't this wonderful for the cryptocurrency space? No, they're creating a further digitized version of the fiat currencies that they already have. They will be able to freeze your accounts, and they're trying to, much like Visa, trying to get you to link up your accounts with these old systems so that they can basically have a complete free-for-all with everything that you are doing. The idea of creating a brand new platform, hear me out here, when the government could have simply given money to Polygon or Cosmos or Avalanche and use those chains instead, is a pipe dream. They would never want to use an actual open chain. They want to make their chain for their city, that is centralized through their government, compatible with other public chains, so that they can see all of your on-chain activity. Busan City has allocated $75 million for open blockchain development compatible with global standards under the Blockchain Innovation Fund. Global standards is the Know Your Customer anti-money laundering rules, where basically every time you do something, you have to give your ID and you have to show them exactly who you are. The funds would be raised through investments from public financial institutions in Busan, with nearly 100 private companies showing interest. Understand that these 100 private companies who are allocating $75 million do not care about you or your privacy. They're doing it so that they can make more money, because blockchain and Web3 are the buzzwords that they throw out there to let you know how young and cool and hip that they actually are. You use crypto? That's crazy. I also use crypto. I use it on this chain. You should link up to that. We can be friends together. The BIF is a private fund that supports the development of Busan's blockchain industry and infrastructure construction, led by financial and public institutions within Busan. The public blockchain development is being done under the Busan Digital Asset Exchange Establishment Promotion Plan, and that's a long title. It's called the Busan Digital Asset Exchange Establishment Promotion Plan and Future Schedule Plan. Why? Why not give it smaller letters? With a focus on making Busan a blockchain city, here's a diagram, a chart. It says Target 2026, Vision, Blockchain City, Busan, and then there's stuff written in Korean, but there's a lot of like 3 letters. BDX goes into BBF, which goes back into BDX, which goes to BWB to BBA. Sure, why not? Cool. I like to be optimistic for stuff like this, but it's about control. Think of how the world has always worked and existed, and governments are not putting more money into these or any new system to try and make life really easier for you. It's for them to gain financial control and figure out what you're doing with your money. And yeah, so cool. Relatively popular news. It has to do with South Korea. South Korea is and was a powerhouse in the cryptocurrency market. I assume that they will be again at some point in the future. And therefore, this is why we keep getting this kind of like hopefully optimistic news from South Korea about the cryptocurrency market. Sure, why not? I'm not against it, but I'm also like, all right. That's the South Korean city of Busan is trying to become a blockchain city with a lot of, this seems really just a lot is happening. Why not just use an open public blockchain? I mean, we all know the answer to that. And yeah, let's move on. Also why not? Coinbase's security team has warned that it has observed a single mining pool known as VIA BTC. Apparently, they control more than 50% of the hash rate for Zcash, a disclosure that has sent alarm bells within the cryptocurrency community. This isn't really big news like it was many years ago in the past. A lot of people, if we can talk honestly here, a lot of people don't really care about decentralization anymore. They don't care about centralization. They don't care about open system and chains. The large majority of the people in the cryptocurrency space don't understand the premise or the idea of what we have in front of us as far as open public blockchains that are immutable. It's a very important word. Immutable. Cannot be muted. Can be used by everyone. Open for the entire world. I understand, believe me, I do. Wanting more money and investing. But a lot of people are in the cryptocurrency space for very wrong reasons. And I mean like normal people, not institutions. We know what institutions are here for. What I mean is that the idea of cryptocurrencies long ago were basically open for everyone on the planet. And whenever we had news that there was something or an indication of what might be a 51% centralization of hash rate or power, it would send alarms through the space. We had times before, years ago, where we figured out that more than 51% of Bitcoin's mining capabilities actually came from China. Everyone went completely insane. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be spread out everywhere across the world, because if you actually have someone or an entity who controls more than 51% of the chain, they can do a number of things. And one of these is worse than the other, and I'll explain how. If you have more than 51% control of it, first of all, it takes an enormous amount of money to be able to do this on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin in this way is relatively safe. I believe it takes hundreds of billions, if not low trillions of dollars to take the capabilities that you would need to spend. Imagine someone wasting $1 trillion to get 51% control over Bitcoin. And then from that point, being able to do things on the network, you can reverse transactions, yada, 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 you kind of name it. The worst thing that could ever happen to Bitcoin is not a slowdown of the network, not a reversal of a transaction. It's actually creating one more Bitcoin, because the network says there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. If on Bitcoin there's a 51% attack and someone creates it so that in the year 2140, there's 21 million and one, well, who's to say that someone else can't print 15, 35? Like, the number one is very significant in that way. Bringing it on back, 51% attacks in the long ago were very sacrilegious. They were something that we did not want to see, and if they did happen, everyone kind of lost their minds, and or would make sure, try to figure out ways to kind of increase decentralization to make sure that there were other nodes and validators and stuff on the network. I knew that in my heart of hearts, the idea of decentralization being important, and I mean actually important to a world that, you know, in a world that you want to live in, hopefully, that is fair and free for all and open to all and allows everyone to, you know, swap their cryptocurrencies and buy chiclets or whatever gum, whatever people are buying now with cryptocurrencies. I knew that all of that fell apart by the time we had news about Solana being restarted. And I remember I said, you can't restart a blockchain, and everyone was like, shut up, TMI, you have no idea what you're talking about. And then they had 13 more problems in 1 year, and I was like, that's clearly not a blockchain. No one should be paying attention to it. And then I realized, I was like, wait, no one actually cares. They're just trying to make money off of the chain. They don't care about like freedom, hope, and expression for other people. It's just about how much money I can make from this one thing. So bringing it on back once again, a lot of bringing it back here. We have news that apparently Coinbase's team was looking into it, and they found out that one of the most popular coins that has private transactions, the trifecta used to be Zcash, Dash, and Monero, actually had a problem, an alleged problem, with centralization. And people cared, but they also kind of didn't care because it wasn't something that really mattered to them, because the idea of centralization seems almost comforting for a lot of people. You're used to your government being centralized. You're used to your healthcare system being centralized. Everything kind of goes into this one pipeline. And you look back and see how terrible that everything is and could be better with decentralization. And you go, I'm kind of okay with the way that it's always been. The Electric Coin Company, or the ECC, the entity behind Zcash, has responded to Coinbase and its preventative measures, stating that they are aware of the issue. Coinbase reported that the network hash rate distribution for Zcash, a proof-of-work cryptocurrency, was severely imbalanced. It stated that over 51% of the hash power distribution on the network is controlled by a single mining pool known as VIA BTC. The cryptocurrency exchange stated that it had indicated preventative actions to mitigate any risks associated with a 51% attack, and also in a 51% attack, depending on how not strong or weak a chain might be. That is to say, comparatively, if you have Bitcoin doing $1 trillion worth of transactions per month, this is a very strong chain. There are tons of transactions, tons of validators, tons of people mining it. You might have another chain that might only do 25 million over the course of a month. I don't know how much Zcash is doing. Who cares? 25 million over the course of a month. If you 51% attack that one, you can literally rip the chain apart. Like, you can imagine like I don't know, some animal, whoever screams like that, just tearing a chain apart. You kind of end the entire thing, and you gotta fork it and then make another new one and hope that that one doesn't have the same exact problem. So anyway, yeah. Zcash also is not the most popular of coins as it was before. A lot of these coins in the early days of the cryptocurrency market were incredibly popular because of the idea that we could potentially be living in a world where people had complete control over their finances. So people finding out that Bitcoin is pseudonymous, that is to say, transactions can be traced. And this is why we keep seeing governments and institutions saying, hey, you should link up with this. You should do this. Give me your Bitcoin address, blah, 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 blah. These other coins popped up and said, no, we have completely private transactions, the trifecta, the 3 coins, and they became very popular. A lot of people began to ask me back in good old 2017, 2018, why I didn't mention these in my videos. Why I didn't have these in my portfolios. And I was like, because you know that governments are going to start banning these coins, right? And guess what happened? Governments began to ban these coins nearly en masse. And a lot of times, crypto exchanges that do accept them, usually they call like putting your shields down. You have to put your shields down so that they can read your transactions, so that it actually can go onto the crypto exchange. But these coins just aren't as popular anymore. Remember this. Remember this conversation? Years ago, here's a good one. We used to, I think this is very hush-hush now. There used to be plans to make sure that Bitcoin also had private transactions. But I assume those are on the back burner. Because I think with the world and governments widely accepting Bitcoin and kind of allowing it to be a thing, we can't have a discussion of Bitcoin having completely private transactions. That's for those of you who don't know why. Litecoin is valuable. Litecoin is usually seen as the test net for Bitcoin. If it works on Litecoin, it works on Bitcoin. And 2 years ago, it's been a while now, Litecoin had an upgrade that gives them completely private transactions. It's called Mimblewimble. Yeah, from Harry Potter. And that is now compatible with Bitcoin, but the discussions of actually implementing it have kind of disappeared and flown out the window. So cool. I hope they get it together. I assume it's because they have a lot less liquidity going through the chain. A lot fewer people are probably mining this coin. Why would I continue to mine a coin that governments don't like and are banning and have said is illegal to use? So, yeah, I wish we lived in a world that was still like 2014, 15, 16, 17 in a multitude of ways, but even more so just as far as like the actual idea of cryptocurrencies and the market and this kind of like a fellowship of the blockchain that we kind of had back then that no longer really exists, where people really cared about like this new form of finance. But yeah, I do sincerely hope that you have all enjoyed. As always, a very special thank you to my Patreon supporters: Jim, Jimmy, American Crypto Academy, Bodie McBoatface, Sam Ratter, Dr. Diddy, Manny Cryptos, Crypto Gambino, Auspicious Agile and Blockchain, Jamie Saad, and let's move on, Empire Queen, Bitcoin Ben, Oracto Dave, The Dealer, Zen Cap, The Summing, and The Z-Way, Lay, Mo, Barazi, VB Nerd 21, Lauren De Silva, Quarterbitty, Troy, Olga, Space, Case, Need a Miracle, Pattern Noster, Navarro Williams, Utopia 569, Moonman, High, Extrapino, Roman, Josh Hosting, The Animal Reader, Bibliophobia, Adam Grace, Wise Night Owl, 242 to the World Bankroll Network, Crypto Artist, Cole D, 3D, Setsuna, Paxis, Jim Garner, Jeremy Fox, Minting Coin, Just a Crypto, Anytime Fitness, Mom's Corner Staff, Bake Me a Cake, Tigger, Macha Lisa, and on Crypto with Lionel. Thank you all very, very much for your support. I do hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and or supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See